What's up, everybody? We have a twin disc clutch in front of me right here. We're replacing our old spec unit. Hasn't been that long, but we had to do it. We're going to tell you why. We're going to show you a little bit of the install. We're going to explain exactly what a twin disc is all about, and we're going to go from there. So hope you enjoy. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's JP from EdgeAutosport.com. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, we've got the twin disc from Clutch Masters in front of us right here, the Spec Stage 3 Plus. And yeah, we're gonna get into why the heck these are sitting here and why we had to do this. So make sure you subscribe. Let us know what you think about the video. Let us know if you have any questions about anything. We'd be glad to help you out. And hit that bell button so that you get notified if you want to watch more of these videos. This is for our 10th gen project, FC3 Civic, of course. And we're just gonna let you know everything about what we're doing. We're getting into a twin disc clutch kit for our project FC3, so we're pretty pumped about that. You can actually find these on our site if you want to get into them. They're more money than a regular disc or than a regular clutch. You know, they're kind of more intense than a regular clutch, but they will hold a lot of power, and they are definitely built to go racing and abuse it and hold a lot of power. So we're pretty excited to put it in our car. So I'll give you a little bit of background on why we're doing this and kind of what happened here. We are getting ready to do the flex fuel video. We have flex fuel on the car right now. As soon as we put ethanol in and turned it up, the clutch started slipping. So this is a Spec Stage 3 Plus, and it's rated at 370 pound-feet of torque at the crank. And you know, we hit right around 300 pound-feet of torque before we did ethanol. So that's going to bump it up quite a bit. It does spool pretty quickly with the stock turbo, but at the end of the day, I think we're a little bit too close to the threshold of this clutch, which is a little bit disappointing, but you know, it is what it is. This is modifying. That's what happens when you go fix up your car and try to go faster. Sometimes this stuff happens. So, you know, make our experience your lesson learned, and it'll be our lesson learned as well. This is kind of a good reason why you pick a clutch that is maybe not way over what you are going to end up making, but a good comfortable amount of torque rating over what you're actually going to end up making. So we're going to show you kind of what happened to our clutch here. So if you look at the disc right here, you can see that there's a lot of just kind of glassy looking material here. Part of the clutch disc, basically, as it spun, it just heats up significantly more than it should, and it kind of becomes glazed over. You know, I don't know exactly what happens to the material, but I would assume it kind of just melts a little bit, gets too hot, and kind of fuses together, and it basically becomes kind of like glass over the top of the clutch material. And at that point, it's really kind of done in a lot of cases. You'll hear the same thing happens with brakes a lot too on performance cars. If the brakes glaze, same kind of concept. It really can't, the two surfaces cannot mate and grab onto each other. They just slide across each other. So that's what happened to us. And you know, at that point we knew we needed a new clutch. So we wanted to try a different clutch altogether, a different brand. We wanted to try the ACT, but unfortunately at this moment in time, it was out of stock, and saw that there was a twin disc out there. So we ordered that up. We're going to put that on our car. This is a relatively new kit from Clutch Masters, so we're excited to be trying this thing out. Hopefully it takes you know, all of our worries away and makes it so that we don't ever have to do this again. So I'll get into kind of what a twin disc is all about. If you look over here, this is the flywheel right here. You know, this is the spec flywheel. This is the Clutch Masters flywheel. This is an aluminum flywheel, but the friction material right here is a separate piece that's bolted onto the flywheel, and this is a much more durable, strong steel surface than the aluminum. So the flywheel, the bulk of the flywheel is aluminum, but this is going to be steel. And this is what the friction surface is. This is where the clutch disc rubs on. This sits on the crank. So this disc is going to just mount on here just like this. Friction surface here, and then we've got another friction surface here, the center divider plate between the two discs. The two discs are not going to rub on top of each other. They each have their own friction surface that they connect to. There's the second disc, and then here's the pressure plate. Now this is a 725 series, so that means it's 7¼ inch disc, which is the smaller of the two discs that they offer. They don't have an 850 for the Honda right now, or for this Honda, for the 1.5 turbo. So we went with the 725. Ultimately, you know, even though they're smaller discs, the two discs together are going to be able to create a lot more friction, a lot more grabbing than one larger disc together. It's gonna take, you know, the load, and it's gonna cut down the load on each disc, create a lot more friction, you know, surface area. And overall, it doesn't need to grab quite as hard on the discs because they're both grabbing. So the pressure plate, you know, believe it or not, I've actually not had a twin disc on any of my cars, but all of our customers, every car that I've driven that has one, and everybody that has experience with them says it's really not that hard of a pedal pressure compared to what it can actually hold. So I'm kind of excited to see what this thing is all about. But these things are really made to hold a lot of power and a lot of torque, and really be built for racing. So excited to put this on. Anyway, we just wanted to give you kind of a breakdown of what happened, why we're doing this video, why we're doing a new clutch, and hopefully you guys can get educated and helps you understand this stuff. So we are gonna put this thing on the car. We've got the car half torn apart behind me right now. We just gotta put this thing on, put it all back together, and we're ready to go. So enjoy. All right, clutch install is all wrapped up. The twin disc is in. A few days ago, we finished the job, and we are getting back to just getting in the car, making sure everything runs right. We were kind of curious to see, you know, with the pedal pressure being a little bit harder before we even turned on the car, was the transmission going to respond very well, given the problems that we were having before, even with a lot softer pressure plate feel. So we hopped in the car and we started it, and you know, unfortunately with the twin disc, I think we're going to experience some issues shifting if we don't modify further. What I mean by that is the clutch is not disengaging enough. It's kind of disappointing at this point to be experiencing this kind of stuff, but after some research, what I found is that the slave cylinder and the master cylinder in the clutch system really has a lot of inhibitors as far as just making it work perfectly for a performance application. It's got a lot of stuff built into there that makes it easier to drive, you know, from the factory for any given person buying the vehicle that wants to drive it. Just makes it a lot easier. There's a delay valve in the slave cylinder that kind of almost prevents the clutch from engaging really quickly and really abruptly, like a performance application you'd want in a performance application. to make it more comfortable on the road. There's also a diaphragm inside of the master cylinder that kind of absorbs some vibration, doesn't transfer a lot of fluid through the clutch system to the throwout bearing, as well as a performance application should. So, you know, we're going to show you exactly what I'm talking about and what happens when you upgrade this car to a really, really stiff pressure plate, to a harder to engage or harder to disengage pressure plate, like the Clutchmaster's twin disc. And then we're going to kind of go about the process of figuring out how to resolve that, figuring out how to have a much more direct fluid transfer system in the clutch master cylinder and slave cylinder assemblies. And luckily for us, there's a lot of information out there on that already, information that we were not familiar with already because we've never really had to do this stuff. It seems like it might be kind of a Honda specific thing, or at least a new car thing with some of these newer clutches that are made to be really easy to drive. So we're going to go about that process. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. But other than that, the disc feels really awesome. With the clutch pedal already feels a lot better. We just have to make sure it disengages and engages properly when we're driving it. And if we don't do that before we drive it, we're going to mess up the transmission. So that is next on our list to do. We are so close to making this thing run really awesome, and I'm just excited to get there. So let's go see what the problem is. Let's show you guys. All right, so the car is off right now, and obviously you can't get this through the video, but it is a much firmer clutch pedal feel. So, you know, you can even see that it presses the clutch pedal back up, like, you know, very, very quickly. The stock one might look the same, but it definitely feels a lot stiffer. I've felt a lot stiffer clutches than this. This really isn't that bad. It's not terrible, like a single disc, really, really heavy pressure plate system. So this is totally doable. Actually, I like the feedback that it gives me just in the pedal. But the problem ultimately becomes when you start the car, you just can't get it in and out of gear very easily. So we're going to show you that right now. So right now we're in neutral. Car's in neutral, clutch is disengaged, and you know, it's a cold start, so we're at about 1700 RPMs, clutch in, and this is first gear. It just will not go in. You really have to press it in kind of hard, and it depends on where the engine is spinning compared to where the transmission is spinning. Right now it might be okay, but at idle at like 800, 900, 1000 RPM, it's just not going to go in very smoothly. It's just too difficult to get into gear, and that's really going to expose itself a lot when you're power shifting at higher RPMs. That's not going to be a good thing. The synchros are not going to mesh properly because, you know, the transmission is going to be spinning at different speed than the engine all the time, and that's just not what we want. So we've got to have those synchros made up nicely and have it shift smoothly like butter. So we're gonna try to modify those cylinders, like I said, and go from there. So when the car is off, you can see, even with the clutch disengaged, you know, the transmission flows smoothly throughout the gears, and that's really ideally how it should be shifting, even when the car is on and the clutch is disengaged. When you have the clutch pedal in, it should just shift super smooth like that with hardly any effort, but it doesn't do that with the car on. Okay, we've got the slave cylinder loose, completely loose off the transmission, off of the rest of the line. So this is what you're going to be taking out if you decide to do this as well. But yeah, we're going to take off, I believe, this piece right out here. There's a little metal clip holding it in. Take out that clip, take off this plug, and then inside of here we'll find the delay valve, and we're going to take that out. Okay, so here is the slave cylinder. We didn't show, you know, everything it takes to get this out. It's kind of a pain in the butt, to be perfectly honest. But this sits inside. So this is, I showed you earlier what we were going to be working with. You can see it's kind of a little bit marred up there. It's aluminum, so it's soft metal, but it's marred up because I was trying to get this little clip out here, this metal ring. So this is what holds in this plug right here. Plug has an O-ring on it. So we got that out, and then inside, this is what we're ultimately taking out, and it's kind of like a little restrictor and a delay valve. You can see the spring inside of there. So this is what you want to take out, And then we'll just pop this plug back in, just like that. Put this lock ring back on, and from that point on, the slave cylinders, apparently it's fixed, and it allows pretty much free fluid movement inside there instead of delaying the movement of the fluid. So this should give us a much more direct feel on the clutch and direct engagement, much better feedback for the driver. So here's the slave cylinder. We're gonna move on to the master cylinder now. All right, so we've pretty much disassembled our entire master cylinder here, the plunger, the cylinder, you know, the inner plunger right here with the spring on it, the little feed fitting right here. We've disassembled all of it, and you know, Hondas are fairly new to me. This is our first Honda as a shop car, my first Honda personally that I've worked on extensively like this. And there's nothing, you know, there's a lot of master cylinder comments about the 8th and the 9th gen having some issue. I've pulled this apart, and there's nothing in here that I can physically see that can be altered or changed like the slave cylinder had, where we pulled out this this delay valve. So it all looks pretty direct. We have a Honda guy here that used to be a Honda tech actually, and he said some of the problems of the 8th and 9th gens were the plunger off of the pedal was a little bit too short, so you put a new clutch in and it wouldn't have the proper length in order to disengage it. But we didn't have that problem with this one. After we've done either clutch, it does, you know, have a full sweep on the pedal. So I don't think this is too short. So I think maybe our only problem was the slave cylinder. Hopefully that's it. Maybe there's something about the master cylinder I'm still not understanding, but we're gonna put it back together, throw it back in the car, see if the modification to the slave cylinder did what we needed it to do, and at least we're only changing one thing so that we can see truly if that might work or not. If it does, then I think we're good to go. So let's cross our fingers and go from there. We're going to throw this stuff back in and try to start up the car and see if the clutch you know, improves at all from here. So I'm about to do that. Okay, so master cylinder's in, slave cylinder is modified, and as you can see, probably look a little bit different than the last time I was shooting. It's been a few days actually since we shot last, doing the master cylinder and the slave cylinder. At the end of the day, that did not fix our problem. We've spent the last several days trying to, you know, here and there working on the car, trying to figure it out, messing with the pedal, messing with this with the master. We actually put the stock one back in again, just tried some different things, and unfortunately, you know, we couldn't get anything figured out or fixed. So it's been a few days. Like I said, I look different. I got the Corona cut going on here, the buzzed haircut. We tried to do, so I'll show you this here. This is the slave cylinder pin from the factory. I had my buddy Tommy from 3P Performance make this. Actually, this is not the one that's, well, obviously not the one that's in the car. I have another one that we made that's even longer in the car. What I wanted to do is try to figure out what the problem was by making a longer pin that stretched from the slave cylinder to the clutch fork. This one helped. We went to an even longer one that was about double the increase in length of this one over the stock one. That helped again. So I'm pretty convinced at this point that maybe, you know, I'm not quite sure what is wrong with our setup. If there's maybe some damaged, you know, pressure plate fingers that are not releasing the clutch all the way. I'm not really sure, to be honest. So we are at the point now, we've tried everything we possibly can. We are going to take the transmission back out, take the clutch out, send it back to Clutch Masters, see if they can help us out, diagnose the clutch if anything is different than their specs than what it should be, and we're gonna go from there. So we're gonna end this video. We're gonna do a part 2 of this whole clutch thing. This has been just a complete pain in our neck, to be perfectly honest. but we're gonna keep working, try to get this thing figured out, and go from there. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. Hopefully you learn from it. We'll see you on part 2 of Clutch Madness. Thanks, guys.